House Speaker Moultrie comments on his resignation. Days of protesting pays off for the nurses union, and the government's completing legislation on medical marijuana to present to Parliament. Good evening, everyone. I'm Leah Cooper with your JCN News for this Friday, February 5th. Well, what some would describe as a jaw-dropping moment, House Speaker Moultrie resigned from the Free National Movement last evening, becoming the first Speaker of the House to make such a move. Our Laurencia Smith spoke with the newly independent Member of Parliament at his office to further discuss.
House Speaker and Member of Parliament for the Nassau Village constituency, Holliston Moultrie, defends his decision to resign from the Free National Movement. Mr. Moultrie tendered his resignation on Thursday evening in a letter to F&M Secretary General Seaford Roll. We caught up with the Speaker on Friday at his office located on the ground floor of the Senate building and asked him how he came to this breaking point.
It is proper, and this is happening throughout the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, for the Speaker to be independent. And I believe that at this time, particularly as we are approaching the dissolution of Parliament and the general election, that the Speaker not only appear to be independent, but to be impartial as we proceed. A number of events led up to my decision.
Speaker Moultrie also discussed some of those issues dating back as far as 2018, which he said since then he has been advocating for the separation of powers and the independence of the Parliament regarding its administrative and financial affairs. He also had concerns with the Speaker's office, which was condemned by police as a security risk for the Speaker. Mr. Moultrie described this as an embarrassment.
Every rope has an end. And when you have a cumulative effect of events that strongly suggests that the actions being taken are not in the best interests of the Parliament, and I have a responsibility to make certain that Article 72 of the Constitution is adhered to, and that is that the Cabinet and the executive branch is accountable and answerable to the legislative branch.
With the 2022 general election about a year and a half away, the 54th Speaker of the House says this about the future of his political career.
I have spoken with some of the members of the Free National Movement Association in the Nassau Village constituency. Some were disappointed. Some felt that I should have consulted with them prior to making the decision, but all of them, having known me for the past from 2016 and working with me, respect the fact that I don't just make frivolous decisions without giving it consideration, and so they respect my decision.
Since the country gained independence in 1973, Mr. Moultrie is the first to hold the post of Speaker as an independent candidate. I'm Laurencia Smith for JCN News.
Good news for the Bahamas Nurses Union today after days of demonstrations from the courtyard of the Ministry of Health to Rawson Square and then to the office of the Prime Minister. The nurses were told that they will be paid. Our news team spoke with Bahamas Nurses Union President Amantha Williams, who says that Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis has agreed to pay the nurses what they are owed in overtime payment after working in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian and the COVID-19 pandemic, along with the honorarium which was promised from July 2020.
We met with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister stated that if he has to pay his own salary, take the funding from his salary to pay the nurses, he will pay them.
Okay.
And the Treasury, ECHO was there, ECHO from Treasury was there, and the Permanent Secretary for the Prime Minister's office and the advisor was there, him and his Trendon. So he authorized that for it to be paid.
According to Nurse Williams, the funds work out to some $300,000 to be shared among nearly 300 nurses. She adds that it's expected to be paid during this February pay cycle. Mrs. Williams also brought clarity to the difference between nurses who fall under the Public Hospitals Authority and nurses who fall under the Ministry of Health. According to Health Minister Renwood Wells, nurses from the PHA have been paid.
How that's run, it's totally two different ends, and the funding that comes for the government comes from the Treasury first. The funding that comes from PHA comes under the authority, which is, we probably get 5% from the government and the rest we come from what the individuals pay. When they come for surgery, private, or when they pay to get an x-ray or so forth, that's where their funding. They generate funding. The government has a 5 to 10% in it they will give to manage that. So that is what we're saying. It's different. It's authority. They don't have to wait for the public service to grant promotion or give you leave. They do all of that in their system. That is the difference from PHA, Public Hospital Authority, and the Department of Public Health is DPH.
The BNU president and executive team assures the nurses that they will not stop until payments are made. The government is in the process of completing legislation to legalize medicinal marijuana. Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis revealing as much this morning during a commissioning ceremony in Hopetown, Abaco. Dr. Minnis, before officially commissioning the Hopetown Shoreline Stabilization Project, sent a message to Bahamians, particularly young Bahamians, just last October. Dr. Minnis told parliamentarians that the government was also considering the legalization of a hemp industry.
The government is in the process of now completing legislation to bring to Parliament to legalize medicinal marijuana so that medical marijuana can be grown by Bahamians here, utilized and exported. Medicinal marijuana.
Dr. Minnis also announced in October that as of this year, 2021, the government will begin expunging records of people convicted for possession of small amounts of the substance.
I also want, especially young people, to hear that we are aggressively moving towards expunging the records of young people, and many have been done already, because too many of our young people have been arrested for minor offenses, including minimal use of marijuana, and their life could be totally destroyed in that they could not obtain proper jobs, they cannot visit the United States, and their futures is destroyed.
Today, Dr. Minnis again called for all who would have been charged with those kinds of minor offenses to apply to the Rehabilitation of Offenders Committee to have their records expunged. As he says, the government will continue to expunge records to protect young people and the country's future. The distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine throughout the islands of the Bahamas will present a logistical challenge, so says Dr. Mercelin Dalregis, chair of the National COVID-19 Vaccine Consultative Committee, during their update press conference yesterday. Though the vaccine is not yet in country, Dr. Dalregis says that the country has the capacity to store 100,000 doses once they do arrive. She also adds that the vaccine will be administered at accessible locations throughout the country to ensure equitable access, with a focus on high-risk populations where COVID-19 has occurred. Here are the priority groups for the administration of the vaccine.
3 priority groups have been proposed. Group 1 will consist of healthcare workers, uniformed branches, and elder care providers. Group 2 include persons with disabilities, persons living in congregate settings, critical workers in high-risk settings, other essential service workers, persons with comorbidities and underlying conditions, as well as sea, air, and ground personnel. Group 3 will include all others not previously identified in groups 1 and 2, and who are eligible.
According to Dr. Dalregis, for islands with small populations, healthcare workers will immunize all eligible residents and will not follow these priority groups. They will also be supported by mobile units from the capital.
There will be 4 steps to complete the vaccination process: registration, vaccination, monitoring of adverse events, and then there is certification. Pre-registration for the vaccine will be available online and at registration centers across the Bahamas once these sites have been finalized. The rollout of the vaccine will be carried out in 3 phases. It is anticipated that the rollout would be conducted over a 6-week period.
Islands will also be profiled on their case distribution. Dr. Dalregis says special provisions will be made for those with disabilities. She adds that along with public healthcare workers, there is a proposal for private practitioners to assist with administering the vaccine to the public.
It is anticipated that anyone receiving a vaccine, completing the vaccine process, will receive a COVID-19 vaccination certificate. In the case of a 2-dose vaccine, certificates will be received following the 2nd dose. The presentation of the certificate may be associated with travel in the future. This is a potential requirement that continues to be discussed by many countries and international partners.
Health officials reminding the public that taking the COVID-19 vaccine is completely voluntary and free of charge. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.